I put an unhealthy amount of time into that game, which I love. So you being willing to come on, it's a treat for me. I love about Divinity Original Sin 2, I think it's the only game I can think of where you can play an undead skeleton character who can bone, which I don't know. I don't know how you came to that idea, but it is hilarious.
My God, if we had to make this work in cinematics, it would have been a very different game. And seeing the game come to life through the cinematics has been just incredible. It's been a wonderful experience.
Part of my problem, though, I think is what you guys have is that you did too good of a job. The problem is I don't want to leave Baldur's Gate 3. I was like, it's ended. And I'm like, oh, it ended too soon. I look at my Steam clock. I have 267 hours. I'm like, oh. Hello, and welcome to CULTURESCAPE, the show that interviews the geek creators and influencers that built nerd culture. Today we have a special guest as we talk about my new favorite RPG, Baldur's Gate 3, with senior writer Stephen Rooney. For those unaware, Baldur's Gate 3 is a mega RPG success developed by Larian Studios that is now available on PC and PS5. If you love immersive storytelling or epic fantasy, you should definitely check it out. Stephen is Larian's go-to undead specialist. He is the guy in charge of writing for vampires and skeletons. He worked previously on Divinity Original Sin 2, another amazing RPG from Larian, where he created the memorable character of Thane, the undead skeleton hero, which he collaborated on with Chris Avallone. In Baldur's Gate 3, Stephen wrote, this time, Astarion, which is the popular vampire origin character, who is voiced and portrayed by the fabulous actor Neil Nubone. In this episode, we're going to learn about the wide world of video game writing, what it was like working on Baldur's Gate 3, the current state of the game, and how great characters like Thane and Astarion came to unlife. And of course, viewers, we have our stupid nerd question of the day. We're going to ask Stephen, what is your favorite and least favorite undead characters in fiction and mass media? Of course, outside of your own creation, because that'd be cheating. Will he choose The Walking Dead, perhaps Castlevania? Well, to find out, you'll have to stay tuned. And if you like what you hear today, please be sure to comment below. Okay, and now with our long intro out of the way, welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's lovely to be here.
I am pleased as a peach. I'm almost, it's like I'm kind of proud, but also a little ashamed. I think I have 260 some hours on my Steam account for Baldur's Gate 3 since that game came out. Now, a lot of that, I was like, the computer was just on. I was, going to do something else. But
sure.
I put an unhealthy amount of time into that game, which I love. So you being willing to come on, it's a treat for me. So I appreciate that.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's great to see people kind of enjoying the game and kind of sinking so much time into it. Between the time people spent in early access and now kind of coming through to play through the whole game, it's been an absolute delight to see people kind of rediscovering it again.
No, I really think it's awesome. I have not enjoyed a game like Baldur's Gate 3 probably since the original Dragon Age Origins and Awakening, which was kind of its expansion. And I felt like BioWare never quite captured that spirit ever again. And you guys have just nailed it. It's really smart storytelling, great characterization. It's really well thought out. It's just kind of the intelligent and fun RPG I've been waiting for a long time. I mean, there are plenty of JRPGs, but this is like the best Western one in probably a decade. So you guys really just knocked it out of the park. Very impressed.
Thank you so much. I mean, we're very lucky that we have our CEO and God King Sven Vinke, who's it has been his dream for so long to kind of make like the RPG, kind of the RPG that dwarfs them all. So we I don't know if he's going to be fully satisfied that he's that we've got there yet, but we're incredibly pleased with the reaction that people have had to the game, and also just very proud of how the game has turned out, because it has been it's been a long time coming, and no, it's great to see it out in the wild.
So let's talk a little bit about your background before we get into video game writing. Before you got into writing, are you a gamer at all? Did you play RPGs or have interest in that kind of fiction?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a gamer for most of my life, so I don't have I think a lot of the long history that some people have with RPGs. I have more of a history with Dungeons and Dragons. I would have played that kind of as a kid, as a teenager, growing up, and still today with friends. It was a little bit ashamed to say I hadn't played the original Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 until I found out that I was going to be working on this. There's some catching up that we need to do here. So I had dabbled in RPGs, but I have a fairly broad palette when it comes to gaming. Kind of a lot of RPGs, lot of shooters, a lot of big strategy games, grand campaign kind of stuff.
Yeah, that fits in well then with this game being a CRPG, because you definitely fit into that. At least your writing does fairly well. What edition did you mostly play on D&D?
I've probably played mostly 3.5 D&D. Kind of there was a lot of that. Yeah, that was the first edition that I came to and kind of stuck with that for a good while. Kind of skipped over 4 a little bit with my kind of gaming groups, and I've been really enjoying 5th edition as well. So D&D has always been a treat.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is 5th edition. It handles that system really well. And I wasn't a big fan of 5th edition, but this has kind of moved me out. But yeah, I grew up with 3.5 as well, and that's kind of the one I harken back to. So I get that. They are one of the great things about Dungeons and Dragons. They're great, of course, as games, but even if you were to never pick up the game and you were just going to read these books, for the flavor text or the lore or even the storytelling, they're really fabulous at doing that.
Yeah, no, they're really great. The hard kind of the hardback books that you get when you go out and you buy a D&D book, the player's handbook and the monster manual, it just opens up and there's an entire world that explodes out at you. There's these kind of beautiful descriptions, there's these gorgeous images, and I remember just being so attracted to D&D books when, even long before I played, I would just see it in a comic book shop or something and just be like, wow, that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. This is great. So yeah, to actually get to be a part of that world, it has been an absolute treat. It's been so nice.
That is pretty cool. You sound a little, when it comes to tabletop gaming, you're a bit of a nerd's nerd. How did you get though into video game writing? It's a very unique industry, even the world of entertainment writing. There's not even necessarily a real clear path to it. It seems like everyone that ends up working in your industry has a different background from the next person.
Yeah, and I mean that's true across the team as well. We all pretty much everyone at Larian has come to writing through a different path. My thing was my path basically was I always wanted to be a writer. I absolutely worshipped Terry Pratchett growing up. So I read his biography at some point. I was like, oh, Terry Pratchett was a journalist and then became a writer. I guess I'll do that. That seems like a fun way to do it. So tried to get into journalism. It turns out I tried to join at a terrible time for journalism and people getting paid. So I kind of dumb lucked my way into writing ad copy, basically, advertising stuff, and then into video games. I took a bit of a break to do a master's in science communication, thinking I would go out and get myself a real job. And then I landed at Larian, and I've been there for the last 8 years. So it's been a lot of luck, and a lot of kind of just hammering on doors helps as well. But I mean, we have people on the team who've come from sort of some screenwriting backgrounds, people who've come from games journalism, people who've come from courses that would help you make games and things like that. There's a wide variety of stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Drew Karpshian, who was one of the major lead writers on the original 2 Baldur's Gate games with David Geyer and a few others, he has a very similar background where he kind of just fell into it. He had taken some creative writing courses in college, but that's about as far as it goes. Uh-huh. And he's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And he put in an app and they picked him up. Of course, this is BioWare before they had any games to their name. And it just kind of happened that way.
Yeah, I think that's the commonality basically with a lot of games writers is that there's no set path. There's I got into it because, well, I mean, everyone gets into it because they have a love of writing, they have a love of creating something. Like they want to be storytellers and they want to bring people on experience. That's kind of the one commonality that I found with everyone. But for the most part, yeah, we're just kind of a bunch of weirdos who all ended up in the same place writing some hopefully madcap, slightly fun kind of stuff. So it's been a trip.
I listened to another interview you did. I think you said when you first worked at Larian, they briefly made you work on the extended edition, or I forget what they call their official edition, for the original Divinity Sin, and then they moved you over to Divinity Original Sin 2. How did you end up being the guy in charge of the undead stuff? How did you slide into that exactly?
I mean, that is that is not an official title. Unfortunately, as much as I would love it to be like the Lord of the Undead for Larry, plenty of other people have done very, very cool undead writing. I just happened to end up with a bunch of weird skeletons in Original Sin 2 and a bunch of kind of creepy vampires in BG3. I don't know. Everyone seems to find a niche where they most naturally fit, and for some reason, my niche seems to be the niche that I've fallen into is slightly tragic, slightly awful undead creatures. So, yeah, I've got through skeletons and vampires, and now I'm kind of thinking like, okay, am I going to have to go through the whole list? Is there going to be like a mummy next, and like a zombie or whatever else? No, Larian is nice in that you're often able to find to find your place in the company. Like when you find something that you're good at, you'll end up doing more and more of that thing. So, I happen to get a kick out of writing undead characters. So it's kind
excellent.
Of stuck. Yeah.
That's a sign of a healthy company, though, if they're able to recognize talents and to help put people where they would be best used. Let me tell you, working in journalism, people still don't know how to make a living doing it. So you probably lucked out there, to be honest.
I think so, yeah.
There are so many, as you know, as D&D player, there's so many great undead races and story ideas. I mean, that one could be mined for a good long time. I love about Divinity Original Sin 2, I think it's the only game I can think of where you can play an undead skeleton character who can bone, which I don't know. I don't know how you came to that idea, but it is hilarious. But of course, the game doesn't have the cinematics because that wasn't brought into the formula till this game. But it's still like pretty wild.
Yeah, it was. I did kind of think back to some of the stuff that we did with Bane, and I'm like, my God, if we had to make this work in cinematics, it would have been a very different game. And so, yeah, not having the cinematics was, in a very small way, a blessing, because it meant that you could do these things that were like a bit ambiguous, whatever you just describe it in DOS 2. But then again, when you see the actual cinematics and you see the characters coming to life in the way that they do in Baldur's Gate 3, like we kind of created a cinematics team basically from nothing, obviously at the start of Baldur's Gate 3, and it grew the whole way through the process. And watching how the game changed as the cinematics were kind of built up and built up and built up, and it became so much more epic and so much more personal and so much more intimate, and it just kind of kicked everything up to 11. So as much as I do love the freedom of just being like, you kind of bone the skeleton, we won't get into how, seeing the game come to life through the cinematics has been just incredible. It's been a wonderful experience.
Does that change for you writing for characters? Because now you have to, you're not just thinking as like someone that's writing flavor. You know, it's almost like you are writing a rule book for Dungeons and Dragons, where you're thinking about flavored text and what has the most epic language. And now you're thinking more like a film writer, where you have to think more logistically. Does that greatly impact your ability to create? do you get a lot of collaboration with the cinematics people, or do they kind of come into the picture after you're writing?
It does. It definitely changes how you go about approaching writing dialogue, and also how you approach like crafting any scene. Because you have to be so much more aware of, okay, these are the things that can happen in cinematics, and these are the things that can't realistically happen in cinematics. And you have to be kind of much more aware of like, okay, if the character's going to pick something up here, that is going to make this scene X times more expensive, rather than if they just like wait some, if they interact with the world around them, cinematics suddenly becomes much more expensive. So you narrow your focus, basically. You become a bit more restricted in the things that you feel that you can do and you can't do. But it also means that when you're crafting a scene and you're thinking, okay, I'm actually going to be able to show this. This isn't just going to be something that's going to be told. The audience is going to see this look, this expression on their face or whatever. So it very literally brings the camera from like way up here right in, and it gives you that an intimacy that you could never otherwise craft. So yeah, and it also does mean that you have to have the dialogue feel a bit more natural, because again, you're right there, you're with people, you're in the middle of the conversation, rather than it feeling like something that's a bit more tabletop, where you're looking down like you were Dust 2. And it gives you much more opportunities to create really beautiful scenes. So I'm extremely pleased you're working with it.
It is really clever. That is kind of like the big innovation of this game for CRPGs. Is it brought in some of that more mass market RPG, like what BioWare would do with the cinematics. With we move the gameplay from above down to here to person level, and it does add a lot to it. I know I'm a bit of a CRPG purist, but it does really increase, I don't know, the way I feel connected to the story, the way I feel connected to the characters. The fact that the actors that are in this, that they were not only doing voice work, but they also had motion tracking going on. So it's their portrayal, the characters. It adds like, they feel very 3-dimensional, and it all just comes together. I was, that's what was so engaging for my brain. It's not that it's just intelligent. It's just, it is so competent and confident on all these different levels that it just leaves me very satisfied and very invested in what's happening.
Yeah, no. And I mean, it is one of these things where I would very traditionally think of the actors that we work with as like, oh, this is the voiceover. This is the, these are the VO actors, the voiceover actors. But you're right, they're in a booth and they have a camera right here recording all of their facial expressions. They have the full body motion capture suits, they have everything on, and they're like, they're putting in tens, maybe even like hundreds of hours of acting, like all this time in the booth. They act harder than than anyone in the theater or on the TV set. It's incredible work that they do.
So where's the idea of Astarion come from? Your work is probably very iterative, but like what was the seed of the idea for this character you put together? Because he's a very interesting character. He's kind of like a vampire in a toxic relationship.
Yeah, that I'm not sure that was exactly the seed, but it very, very quickly became clear that was what the character was, and that's what was at the core of his story. Basically, we have a vampire who is not powerless, but like he's a vampire spawn, which we had to do because if he was an actual vampire, as a nerd yourself, vampires are very powerful creatures in Dungeons and Dragons. So we had to make him a vampire spawn. That means that he had to have a master. But if he had to have a master, it means he had to be kind of removed from his master. So you end up with this situation where you have a character who is, in theory, very powerful and is working towards being kind of is chasing that power and that freedom, but at the same time is also incredibly weak and incredibly vulnerable, and playing off that dichotomy between a hunger for power and a very real vulnerability. Even though obviously we had to make sure that he could actually walk in the sun, otherwise it's a very difficult game to play. So some of the vampire vulnerabilities.
He needs something like a big umbrella, like a
that
really
would have been
big
great.
umbrella.
Yeah, actually, we should have just done that. It would have saved on the whole tadpole thing. No, we hit on what was cool and interesting, and what was at the emotional core of that character very early on. But how we told that story into the like we knew very early on kind of where Astarion, what his starting point was, and it was fairly clear what his end point was going to be. That he was going to have to come to terms with his master. He was going to have to try and like figure out his place in the world, and these kind of bigger decisions that you build towards in the end of the game. Not to spoil too much. But that middle part, we iterated a lot around that, trying to just figure out, okay, what's his journey going to look like? Who are the characters he's going to encounter? What are the choices the players are going to make, and how are we going to get from this point which we know to this point which we know? So that was kind of the adventure for us, really, just trying to figure out getting it from A to B, and just everything in the middle.
That is a good point. That it does take clever and solid writing. I love Astarion as a character. He's fun because if he's in my party, he's kind of the enabler. He's gonna enable some toxic bad behavior, but he's also really fun because it's like these are really effed up situations, and he's just kind of enjoying the ride. And I like that attitude, especially when you're dealing with some of the other companions of your party who are a bit more they put on more airs and feel like they're above everything that's happening. And he's just like, no, we're just go there and get down in the mud. So I love that about that character.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's it. It's one of the things that makes him really fun to write. That he does have this very, I hadn't thought of him as an enabler before, but you're absolutely right. Like there's so many times where he will just like prod the player to like, the bad thing you really want to do. You could just kill this person and steal all their stuff. Like that would be fine. That's very much kind of the attitude and the energy that you break and switch. And it is a lot of fun. But again, hopefully kind of tinging that with a sense of I don't know. It's that line between someone being evil or a bit naughty or just a straight up like bad person. And Astarion has a lot of baggage. He has a lot of damage that he brings to the story. But hopefully just enough humanity that people feel engaged and people really want to walk with him on the journey that he goes through in the game.
Did you have any like personal experience with like domestic abuse or had experience with like some toxic people in your own life or that you knew? I thought the way you handled because I think in most mass media, when it comes to talking about abuse, it's very black and white. The abuse victims are very pure and innocent and they did no wrong, and the abusers are like as evil as you can. In life, it's usually some mix of the two. It's more gray. One of the things I really like about Astarion that you handled well is, he flickers between these two wavelengths, right? He could be kind of wicked, but kind of a good guy, and you as a character can kind of help guide him. So we're not gonna do any Act 3 spoilers, but one of my favorite moments in Act 2, when you're hunting down the cult of the Absolute, you can go to the cult's base, and there's a gal there who is obsessed with studying magic and the blood. And so she finds out you have a vampire with you, and she's so excited, and she'll give you a special +2 to strength potion if you have Astarion drink her blood. And you kind of have to coax him into it. And after it, he really hates it. And you can talk with him and you can be like, well, Astarion, what does this mean for you? Does it, because now you're doing this. You're not being made to do this. Well, how does that affect you? And I thought it was quite an intelligent, almost a moving moment, because he's like, I don't have to put myself through this anymore. I was made to in the past, but I'm now my own person. I don't need to do that. I thought that was exceedingly well written and really stood out as one of the moments in the game.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, I was lucky. Like, Astarion has been kind of, I've been the main writer for him, but it has been like a collaborative process the whole way through. And Baudelaire Welch, one of our narrative directors, I think that's their title, did kind of help a lot with those, with some of those scenes. So it is like, I think probably like with a lot of writing, there's always bits of yourself that you put into it, even if they're not like direct analogies, a lot of the time. So I hope the stuff that lands there or the stuff that's there lands and feels true to people and feels, I guess it feels like it's handled as well as it can be. It's always a difficult topic to kind of touch on. You have to deal with it with sensitivity, but also try and have a certain amount of like the emotion, the like visceral emotion that can come with it. So I think we walk that line kind of as best we could, and we try to be very aware ourselves about like, okay, are we hitting the right tone here? Are we hitting the right tone here? Is this too much? Is this not enough? Is this doing justice to the experience that people may see in this? So, yeah, it was a difficult one, but I think and hope we managed to get how complicated those kind of dynamics can be.
It is. It really is. And I think it's incredible that the way you as a character engage with him will change his attitude on how he feels or perceives these different things and what his trajectory is. And it's not in the sense, and this is what you guys did even better than the older BioWare games, where it was very much, you could straight line them to good, straight line them to bad. Oh, yeah. I can fix you. But in this game, it's like I can help you a little bit, but this guy's still determining their trajectory. Like with Gale the Wizard, you could help him come to terms or not, but he's still going to make some bad decisions there. I'm trying hard not to get into spoilers, which I think is so smart, because that's what all good fiction does. It's these these characters have a life beyond what our protagonists have. So they have their own feelings, motivations, goals. And it's not like, our character's world and the world revolves around him. So
I think it's the things that I do see a lot are people saying like, oh, there's this character and I can fix them, and there's this character and I can make them worse. And I feel like Larian is very good at we're very good at providing the two options. But also I get what you mean. You see it a lot in games where you have character starts at point A and you can go to straight line to bad and straight line to good. And one of the things that's very important to us when we're writing, when we're designing these characters, is that it doesn't feel like that. Like, you get this sense that this is a messy journey for these characters, and they are going to go through they're all going to take their own path. They're all going to go through their own process. And it's important that it isn't just like a simple binary of at this point in the game, the player makes the decision and then you get the good ending or the bad ending. Where one of the things that makes working on these games a lot of fun and really rewarding, but just sometimes an absolute nightmare, is try to keep track of all the different permutations and all the different endings. Because you can be like, okay, at this point in the game, we made this choice, which was kind of good. But then at this point, this choice was kind of bad. So you end up in this gray area here where you do some things, not others. And each character has their laundry list of possible outcomes. And it means when you're looking at the end of the game and you're like trying to sum up a character's journey from the whole way through, it gets complicated. But it is very, very satisfying when it lands and when it works.
Yeah, because you're not just writing one story. It's like you're writing one of those, they're popular in the 80s and 90s, like a choose your own adventure kind of book.
Oh yeah, I love those.
You have to like think like all the different ways this story has to peel off, because in case they choose a different option. I imagine that is difficult as a writer. I even as a player, it seems like a lot to keep track of.
Yeah. It is. We're lucky that we spend so much time with these characters that there's a lot of that knowledge that we'll just hold in our heads, and we'll be able to say, okay, well, they did this in Act 2, and they could have done these different things in Act 3. So we generally are able to keep track of it. But when you have to start listing stuff, and when you have to start looking through dialogues that can count for all the different things, it really feels like a choose your own adventure novel story sometimes, where you're jumping to page 50 and then you're going back to page like 7 and then jumping forward to page 83. It's a bit chaotic, but it's real good fun.
So you did have a good long time to work on this project, because I think that BG3 has been in development about 6 years, I think. And then half of those were early access. So the first act, in its myriad of forms, was available for some players to help you guys basically alpha test it.
Yeah.
What is it like working on a project that long and watching the game evolve and your own stories evolve with it?
COVID definitely didn't help it in the middle of it. I think we all would have enjoyed it. It would have been like a slightly shorter process. That did make the development process more difficult. But you go on as much of a journey as the characters do, really. Like, you see the story change from the starting point when you first start looking at a game, and like the story will be sketched out in whatever form will be as complete or incomplete as it happens to be at that point. And you just see the iteration process kind of roll on. It's difficult because sometimes you will have ideas in your head of like, oh, wasn't this character meant to do that thing? And then you're like, no, we cut that 3 years ago. But if you just haven't been like working on an area, if you haven't been working on a character, you can kind of lose track of it. So on the one hand, it means that you're very, very intimately kind of aware of everything that you've worked on the journeys that your characters have gone on, that your parts of the story, the areas, the different places that where you've mostly written characters, how they've changed. But it also means that it's an absolute treat when the game comes out, because now I can play through these different areas that I had little to nothing to do with, and I'm finding a story that is completely different to something that I remember. And I'm like, oh God, the people who've been working on this have just done an amazing job, and I get to experience it all brand new, fresh, just neatly like any other player. So it has its ups and downs, definitely. It's been a roller coaster development.
I should have made this my first question, but are you playing Baldur's Gate 3? So it sounds like the answer to that is yes.
I am. Yeah. No. Prior to launch, we did. I mean, obviously, the writing has to stop at some point, because the lines you're writing for your actors, you write them, they go to the actors, they get recorded, they come back, they go through cinematics. There's a whole long kind of process. So there is this relatively short period before the game comes out where writers and certain other teams don't have a whole lot to do. So we were just playtesting the hell out of the game. We were just playing it kind of through as much as we could. And when I've worked on other games, there has been this sense of like, oh, I've been looking at this thing for like so many years. It's the last thing in the world I want to see. but I am still having fun with BG3 is the actual miraculous thing. And I am still like, I'm going to be playing it this weekend. I have a playthrough where I'm in Act 3. I'm moving around Baldur's Gate, and I'm like, no, I want to go back and explore that little crypt actually that I hadn't looked at properly before. I want to see what's going on in there. So yeah, I am still having fun with it.
So what did you roll? Are you who did you choose for your origin character? What class are you doing? I'm curious.
I have a half-orc barbarian for this particular one, which I felt great about right up until I met Karlak and was like, oh man, I already had a barbarian. I should have done a monk. My next playthrough is going to be monk. I've actually never played monk, and I keep finding these gloves that improve my unarmed strikes and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I just need to do this because I feel terrible that I can't have all these items and I can't use them other than feed them to Gale. So
yeah, no, that's cool. I did a warlock tiefling. I did not do dark urge. I'm a little regretting that, so I think the next time I go through I'll have to do dark urge. Typically when I play the previous games that Larian does, I usually choose to basically create your own character origin story, not so much the other ones. I kind of feel like Baldur's Gate is more designed for that per se than even those were. But no, it's an excellent game. It's so much fun. The multiplayer works. I've enjoyed the heck out of it. Really, really did. So here's a good question. So how did the game evolve when you're working on it, especially when you hit early access? Because now you've spent 3 years, it's just you and the other people in the company. And then now you're putting it out to the public. I know early access because I did play early access, not like months and months. You know, I'm not as dedicated as some people. I'm also bad at doing homework.
More than fair, yeah.
Yeah. But lots of changes, many changes happen. Like, for example, there was a whole plot line with Minthar, the dark elf, where she gets pregnant. You kind of have to balance all that and all that. Now that's completely different. I mean, tons of big changes. How does that affect you as a writer? Is it like are you getting notes from the devs that are like, oh, they hate this all, you have to change it right now?
It's not that severe. The thing is, once you put when we put the game out into early access, people obviously come back with opinions thick and fast. And so if there's something that there's normally, as a writer, you will normally have kind of a sense like, oh, I think something isn't quite working here. Or, oh, there's something that like it would be nice to add here, but like we didn't have the time or whatever. And then as soon as you put a game out and all the feedback starts flooding in, those choices suddenly become very, very crystal clear. And it feels like, okay, this thing that I was kind of humming and hawing over it to include or not include, it actually feels like it's a huge hole that players are noticing. So we need to plug that. We need to fix that. It's a very, very good way of giving yourself perspective on these are the things that we need to change or fix or improve. We're quite strict though about it's very important that when it comes to the solutions for these things that they come from us. There's never really a point where people say like, oh, all these players want this character to go on this path or to make this decision. It's I think it's a Neil Gaiman quote where he said people are very, very good at telling you what's wrong with the story, but very, very bad at telling you how to fix it.
Yes, that does sound right.
That is basically it. It's getting feedback from people is a very good way to highlight the places where you're not doing well enough. So it's always good afterwards to come back with a renewed sense of, okay, we now have a much clearer idea of the stuff we need to fix. We're going to come up with ideas on how to fix it, and we're going to deliver kind of a much better game. And you can see the polish, I think, especially when playing through Act 1. I was really surprised on my own playthroughs, going through Act 1 again and just being like, wow, this feels much tighter than it did, certainly in early access. So having that longer thing just means that you get to iterate on stuff again. It means you have a fresh perspective on everything that you put out and like a renewed vigor to fix it, because now you can see people are having a whole lot of fun here, but it's not working for people here. You want people to enjoy every single thing they touch.
Part of my problem, though, I think is what you guys have is that you did too good of a job. The problem is I don't want to leave Baldur's Gate 3. I was like, it's ended. And I'm like, oh, it ended too soon. I look at my Steam clock. I have 267 hours. I'm like, oh, maybe it's me. Maybe it's just me.
You still have a Dark Urge playthrough, I hear, but it's no, I know it's this kind of the difficulty with any part of media where you have such a good time going through the exploring a world that's been created, whether it's in a game or a film or a series of books, and at some point you have your Alexander the Great moment where you hit the end and there's no more world to explore, there's no more world to conquer, kind of, and you're like, well, is this it? Do I just shed a tear, or I can really relate to that.
What do they do with their writers since the project is finished? Do they just keep you guys on standby? How does that work? Do they like just hold on, and every now and then they send you an email? We need you to write something like this.
There's always something to do. So I mean, whether it's the team is doing various bits and pieces. Some of us are, for some people, it's still playtesting. For some people, it's bug fixing. We've been working on largely that there is writing content that's still going on, and that's going into like the patches. Like you said, Karlach has a new ending that was added, so that obviously requires work. So yeah, it's not like months and months of lead time if we want to do fixes here and there, thankfully. So everyone is still busy. No one's just sitting around, unfortunately, just enjoying, just sitting on our laurels and enjoying the experience.
That's really interesting, though, that they seem to. I like Larian because obviously it's had a lot of success, but it does have the attitude of a smaller studio where it's like everyone hands on deck, people doing multiple types of different jobs, keeping everyone busy. I really like that because that's kind of how BioWare used to be back in the day. It was everyone's doing something of everything, and it's great because it turns out a really great product that's very cohesive, and it sounds like that's the way Larian is still now.
Yeah. I mean, Larian has had kind of like small company energy for mostly the entire time that I've been here. I've been with Larian for about 8 years. Like you said earlier, I came in kind of when they were wrapping up on the extended edition of the first original Sin. So it was, I think it was mostly just kind of the Belgian studio at that point, and they were setting up in Dublin and in Quebec as well. So as the games have gotten bigger and as we've gotten more ambitious with the stuff that we've wanted to do, the company has like expanded a lot. But there is still that, I think we try to keep that ethos of giving people the freedom to experiment with things, that kind of small company vibe of trying to make sure people have the freedom to do not whatever they want, but like to wear different hats as much as possible and find their role in the company as best they can.
That is so awesome to hear. And obviously it's paying off. I think about what's happened to some of these game companies in the past, including, BioWare, which created the first two Baldur's Gate, how they got purchased by EA, and slowly most of the original staff filtered out till they lost even the writers. They just lost the guy for that wrote the character of Varric. He's a dwarf character that's prominent in Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition. And now she's gone. I'm like, who else is in this company? They fired David Gator, and he was like their Dragon Age writer. He even wrote the books for them. And it's like no one from the original team there is left. And you think, well, now do you guys just have 9 to 5 people in suits? And, it doesn't have the same spirit anymore. And I don't know. I would hope, and I do hope that Larian continues to keep that. You seem like you have an interesting boss. I love that video where he announces the game and he's wearing a full suit of armor with a sword. That's great.
Yeah.
Does he ever come to work like that? He's like, "Good morning, boys," and he's in his full plate meal.
I don't get to spend anywhere near enough time in the Belton studio, unfortunately. I mean, I have definitely been in calls with people before when I was over there, and he has just kind of clanked past in the background, because he will have been recording some update video. It's the Sven is a god. He's just a whirlwind of energy and creativity. It's hard to describe really, but it's one of the things that he is probably the single most thing that makes Larian as unique as it is. He's very driven to make just incredible quality games. So I have incredible respect for him for that.
Oh, many years of health then to Sven. Please don't lose Sven. It's interesting. What was it like working with Wizards of the Coast? Because someone had leaked a sheet of some of the demands or they had put together a sheet of the demands that Wizards of the Coast had made for certain characters. Like you meet some of the original characters. I mean, you meet some of the characters from the original games, and a few of them have drastically different personalities because when those games came out, to when Wizards of the Coast added them to their books, they wrote them in a very different way. And people were like, well, why did this character change so much? Well, it's because Wizards of the Coast told him to. Were there any concerns like that? Were you told when you were writing, Wizard says it has to be this way?
I had very little like direct contact with Wizards. My understanding is I've no one has ever told me like we need to do it this way because Wizards said so. Like it's been the game is very much driven by Larian's ethos and the creativity that we wanted to make sure was present and like not compromise on that. I don't think we were ever required to compromise on it. As I understand, there was a very good relationship with Wizards.
So that might just be heedless internet rumor then.
Entirely possible. It's not anything I know anything about.
You worked at Larian, so I don't want to get you in trouble in any way. It's very important if someone come on my show, I don't ruin their life. So I'm very careful.
Okay, great, yeah.
But
and likewise, I hope people who come on your show do not ruin yours.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I only one or two have tried. What I was gonna say is, Wizard of the Coast as a company with Dungeons and Dragons, as you are a D&D player, right now is kind of they're not on the best of terms with people at the moment, especially with some of the SR changes they made. So when this came out, this was like full frontal Dungeons and Dragons. It really was a breath of fresh air, and it made me really happy. So it is interesting that it is at this time where Wizards is probably least liked than it's ever been, that they probably came out with the game that's most D&D that they've ever had. And I like that. I like kind of that weird dichotomy. But I think I heard your boss say that they had to really court Wizards of the Coast, and then they had to purchase the rights to make Baldur's Gate.
I mean, there definitely was a process. I think that I don't know what kind of overtures have been made before, but like I know that it was only after Divinity kind of Original Sin 2 came out that we were that I think that conversation was, and they could see the quality that like Larian could deliver. I think that gave them a lot more confidence that actually know if we're going to trust Larian with an IP like Baldur's Gate, then they are actually the people for the job. That they've put out Original Sin 2. It had a lot of the freedom that we wanted it to have. It had kind of the interesting storytelling, and it had a lot of things that people would experience in a Dungeons and Dragons game, even at a Game Master mode. So there was, I think they were able to look at DOS 2 and see a lot of what they would have liked to see in Baldur's Gate 3. And that probably gave them the confidence to be much more open to licensing kind of agreements and stuff like that. Again, very much not my field. I don't have any great insight into that.
One of the other, this kind of plays into the same theme. And you're probably, because you are a bit of a gamer, you may be somewhat aware. After that Baldur's Gate 3 came out, it was doing really well. There was this weird kind of anti-Baldur's Gate 3 stuff going on with the game dev community, where people were feeling that Baldur's Gate 3 had set too high of a bar of the impression of what a game could provide, especially at launch, which was, I didn't quite know what to do. And part of the attitude that I thought your boss, in one of the interviews, he made this really good point. I think he gave this with Washington Post's Gene Park, who I'm a huge fan of, amazing game journalist. And it's like people are acting like, we just took this hugely popular IP and we just made a game on it. It was so easy, when it's like no one had been talking or thinking about Baldur's Gate in almost 20 years. And he's completely right on that. But people treated Larian, especially those first 2 weeks, just kind of like Mean Girls almost. Like they were kind of jealous. They were kind of sniping back. Thankfully now Starfield is now the one everyone's bullying. So they moved on from that. But
sure.
I felt the attitude there was kind of, I don't know. It was very Astarion like. It was a little bit of that petty jealousy going on.
Oh God. I don't know. I know there was a lot of discourse around it. I don't know how much of it was like clickbaity or how much it was trying to get people riled up. From what I read of like the original thread, I think that people were talking about it. The message that I took from it was basically, we're very excited for Baldur's Gate 3, but please don't expect like every indie developer to be able to deliver on a game of this size and scale, which is a totally reasonable point. I will say that like nothing about the making of BG3 came easy. Like Sven was absolutely right with kind of what you said. It's not like we just grabbed an IP and went skipping through the builds. We had to build up the entire company. We had to build up the apparatus to actually make this game, and then we had to make it through COVID, through lockdowns, through a very long iterative process. Like it was not easy. But the thing that I will say is the feedback that I've seen from game devs kind of at launch and since launch has been incredibly positive. And it's been like so many people going out there having fun with the game, sharing their experiences. It's been really great, and everyone, I think game devs want to see games do well, whether it's their own or like anyone else's. I don't think there's anywhere near as much kind of bad blood as people seem to be implying as there might have been. So yeah, I don't
know. No, I appreciate your perspective, because I've not worked in game development. I think it's extremely interesting field. It's something I'd love to write about more and understand more. But you do get, that was kind of like the big discourse for about 2 weeks in August. So I thought, well, I have you here, might as well ask what you thought of it.
Sure.
What do you guys hope to do with Larian next? Is there, because the creative director for this game has just moved on. It sounds like he's hoping to move on to something else. Or is Larian starting to look at new projects to take on? Obviously, you couldn't tell me what they are, or is the focus still we gotta get this game finished before that?
Basically, the stuff that I can say is we have some patches coming up. We want to make sure that the game is working kind of as best it can, and we're really looking forward to what we can do in the future. But I have no details beyond that. Sorry.
What would you like to do? What would you like to cover? You said that you've covered skeletons, you've covered vampires. What's next? You just did elephants. Maybe you could do like a necro elephant, or I don't know.
I don't know.
One of those things with the big tongues.
There's such a wide variety of monsters and weird undead creatures and just freaks and weirdos out there. That I'm not sure what I'd love to dive into next. I mean, I have written a couple of characters that people seem to think are are like intellectual or witty on some level, and it would be nice to write an absolute moron. That would be fun. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to whatever it's going to be, though. I've had tremendous fun over the last 8 years, and I'm sure what comes next will be just as fun, if not more so.
Okay. What other characters did you write for BG3, or did you assist in writing? So Astarion is there. Did you get to like write the other people surrounding him, so you like would handle the different vampire characters, or
I did a lot of characters kind of relating to Astarion. It tends to be easiest if the origin writer will also like the people in that origin's kind of periphery. So Astarion's master, Cazador, a lot of the, like, some of the other creepy qualities around Cazador and Astarion that you meet along the way. Yeah, I'm not trying to be conscious of spoilers. And who else did I don't. There's so many characters that have passed through a bunch of different people's hands, and like I did the most of the Drider. I did like a little bit of Ketheric form. I did more NPCs than I can count, kind of at like little NPCs dotted around the place that I can count. But I also wouldn't want to stick my flag on those and be like, no, those are my characters, because it's a very collaborative process in a lot of cases. So
you don't know if one of your coworkers is like really married to the Drider. They're like, no, you don't understand. I made that character an inspiration of my grandfather. How could you say that, Stephen?
I think possible. It's I do know that the writer that did Anti-Ethel, there was when I asked her kind of about the kind of the inspiration about that, it was just like, just my grandmother, just kind of an old cantankerous Irish grandmother. Yeah, no, everyone brings their own thing to the game, to the characters.
Awesome. And Eddie's stuff with the Fae is also excellent. I like the Drider character. I felt like they don't really do much with him after he walks you through the cursed woods there, but yeah, you can't have everything. Yeah, I'm just curious. I just like the game, so I'm like hearing all this kind of stuff, and I appreciate you being willing to share it.
No, of course. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, was there anything that didn't make it to the final game that you were hoping?
The stuff that didn't make it to the final game is probably like another. I would say another game unto itself, because that was not stuff that went the whole way through development. But there have been so many different ideas and things kind of over the course of development that would have been great. This is probably going to just be another really tedious answer of like, I just can't really think of anything that's a good example that would be great to share, because again, there's always, I don't know, there's always a slight chance that stuff might get reused somewhere else further down the line for something different. There's a lot of times where you have just like a good idea and it'll just stick in your head, and you're like, well, I didn't have a great place for it in this game, but maybe in the next one I'll find somewhere for this scene. So that would be fun.
Did you have any of that from Divinity Original Sin 2 into this? Did you feel like you carried what you had done there, or ideas that you couldn't use there, into this project?
I don't think anything that really made it in. There were a couple of things, or there were a couple of ideas that I would have played around with. But nothing kind of great. There, I did have an idea at one point that I really would have loved to do, which was just where you try to teach Minsk how to play chess, or the equivalent of chess, and I really enjoy fun, silly, stupid little scenes like that, where stakes are very low and you can just have a bit of fun with characters. Those are a lot of those are my favorite kind of things to play with. It feels like you have the most freedom, but also connects you the most to a character. So,
I don't know if you could get him to play chess though. That would be tough. Well, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you would just play with Boo. Maybe Boo would act. Maybe he'd just be doing whatever Boo told him.
Chess, actually. Boo would probably kick everyone's ass. Yeah.
I like him in this game. I also like to hear, I know a lot of people are complaining, but I played the original game, so I like having some of these people return. I just think Matt Mercer is so fun. He's such a fun voice actor with such a great personality. So it's like more Minsk, the better, in my view.
Yeah, no. And the Minsk lines are just like, I think Rory Moore was the writer for him, and there's a lot of times where you're looking at say a dialogue, and like all the there will be a point where like whatever origin you have can interject a little bit into the dialogue, and so you have just a list of all the different lines. This is what Gale would say, this is what Astarion will say, this is what everyone will say. And a lot of the time when I would look to, I'll like open up the dialogue file and be like, okay, you have to write this Astarion line. I'll quickly scan everyone else's lines, and Minsk's were always just golden. Minsk and Karlak always had such brilliant things to say. It always made me very happy every time I got to read them.
So what do you guys have a certain program that you use for dialogue? I know some other companies I've read, sometimes they might even use something like Excel. It's very basic, but it sounds like you guys probably have something fancier than just that.
We have an internal editor, so it's not a third party software. It's a thing that Larry has built over the years and controls. So it's great. It means that if there's a feature that you need or something, you can kind of poke someone and be like, hey, would it be a huge deal if you could add this? So it's wonderful to have that and bit of flexibility.
Instead of trying to fight the actual whoever owns the software, like Unreal is like famously stingy at adjusting or adapting things. So that makes sense.
Sure.
Well, I don't have too many other questions. I really appreciate you coming on. Have you any interest in doing anything else? Would you like to write a book one day? Do you have any creative plans, like personal goals that you would like to work on?
Oh God. I mean, I have ADHD, so the thing that I would love to do changes just about once a week. So I have always had since I was a kid, I always wanted to write a book, to actually have like a novel or two out there in the world. That would be great. And I don't know. At the moment, I'm mostly looking forward to working on something that isn't Baldur's Gate, as much as I really, really love Baldur's Gate 3. knowing that I'm gonna like at some point we'll sit down and look at something fresh and get to play around in with new characters or in a new world, kind of whenever whatever comes down the line, like new scenarios. That's going to be going back to that nearly embryonic stage of creativity where it's like the world is your oyster, and you can do not quite whatever you want, but very nearly. I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, anything is possible again.
Yeah.
You've worked at this thing for 6 years. That seems pretty fair.
Yeah,
want to try something
it'll
else.
It'll be very exciting to work on something new.
Yeah, I mean, you guys don't typically do things like DLC per se, but I mean, further adventures, even with the stories that you have, I think it'd be fabulous if you could, what happens to Karlach after she has to go back into hell, if that's what happens in your playthrough. Just play through that, or what happens to Astarion? Would he work towards world domination? There's so much you guys could work through, or maybe you won't do any of it at all. Maybe we'll just move on to different project.
Yeah, I mean, like what is coming next for Larian will be announced all in good time, and that's
and you'll be right there chugging away at whatever undead creepy they give you next.
Here's hoping.
Okay, all right. Well, we're about to tie this up, so we were going to ask our stupid nerd question of the week, and I have this week, as I mentioned earlier in the show, what is your favorite and least favorite undead character in fiction in media? And you cannot choose your own stuff. So I will start to give you a little bit of time to think. I think my favorite undead in fiction, I'd say more recent time. Well, this is exactly recent, but 2013's In the Flesh, which was a very short-lived, I think it's ITV. It got 2 seasons, where it's what would happen in the society if after a zombie apocalypse, like they find a drug and a way to make zombies medicated and debilitated. And it's really fascinating look at that concept. And it's like these people, some of them remember being zombies, and some of them feel like society is stifling them, and their true selves are zombies, and they have to deal with like all the foul. Like, what happens if you ate your brother? Like, you ate your brother, and now you're back home. How would you work that out with mom and dad? That would be difficult.
Yeah, it'd be tricky.
Yeah, In the Flesh is great. I love In the Flesh. My least favorite. Ooh, I used to love Walking Dead, but that really, post-COVID, things went downhill real fast. I think I'm going to have to say that. I think The Walking Dead, unfortunately, especially Fear the Walking Dead. I have a friend, Eric Kane at Forbes, and he hates that show with a passion. And he's always getting the Fear the Walking Dead fanboys coming at him all the time, day and night. So I join him in that. I do not like that show. That's my choice. What would be yours? What is your favorite undead fiction or media? What's your least favorite?
I think to stay on topic, I'm gonna stick with vampires and depictions of vampires, and probably I will say my least favorite kind of depiction of vampires is maybe the movie version of I Am Legend, because I had read the book, or the novella, which has kind of like an interesting, nuanced kind of take on like post-apocalyptic kind of vampirism, basically, and it felt like the movie took that. It was like, okay, cool, post-apocalyptic vampirism. They yeeted all the subtlety and all the interest kind of right out the window, and made them just had an opportunity to do something really interesting, and just made them mindless, infected.
Yeah, they were basically zombies. They were
basically
vampires. They turned into zombies.
Zombies with sharp teeth.
They have good dental. They have a good dental insurance.
Absolutely. My favorite depiction of vampirism, especially very recently, it's gotta be what we do in the shadows. Like it's fun and it's stupid and it's subversive in some ways, but really hammy in others, and but always just fun. And like both the movie and the TV series, I desperately love them both. So not quite in keeping with Astarion, but the humor is just so good, and it's smart, and it makes me smile every single time.
That's a good choice. I do love. I have not seen the latest season, but I have seen the first two, and I love that movie. It's like when I after Love and Thunder, I was like, why do people like Taika Waititi? Like, what was that about? Because it was bad enough. I was like,
Oh,
were we wrong? Like, what happened? And then I went back and watched what we did in the show. I was like, no, actually, he can be very funny and very clever. Yeah.
He's very good. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about Love and Thunder. Don't know what happened there. Ragnarok was great. Had a blast with that. But anyway,
no, I like your answers. Those are good answers.
Thank you very much.
And you should not get in trouble because Larian does not have a contract with Marvel or Disney. So you can badmouth the MCU as much as you want. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Stephen? Maybe not. If you want people to be able to follow you, where can they find you on social media?
I don't know. I generally discourage people from following me because mostly my Twitter feed at the moment is just me retweeting amazing fan art. So if that's what you want, if you want a stream of other people's really cool work, you can find me on Twitter at Nuckpang, Nuckpang. Mostly I just want to reiterate, like, thank you for having me on. Thank you to all the fans who are enjoying the game, and it's just been a hell of a journey, and still the head is still swimming a little bit from release and everything that's followed. So
no, it's awesome. The reaction is great. Thank you for me. I had a medical scare at the end of July, beginning of August with a brain issue. And so the last month playing this game, it was kind of a little bit like rehabilitation for me. It helped me to, as I slowly recover and try to get to a better state of mental being. This game was a big help, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate you guys made a good game, and I appreciate it was something that has entranced, inspired so many people, and has really reinvigorated the RPG genre. And for so many reasons, thank you, Stephen. Thank you to your coworkers. I love the game so much. I really do appreciate it. It's awesome what you guys have accomplished here.
That all means a lot.
All right. Well, friends, we are going to cut it off here. This podcast YouTube show of CULTURESCAPE is sponsored by Bain Books Publishing, an imprint of Simon & Schuster, with support from Young Voices, a journalism organization. Editing is done by my good friend and competent professional, Chris Hollywicki, who makes me look like I'm so much better at this than I actually am. And of course, to all of you for your support and interest. Until next time, my friends, keep geeking out.